How can you tell when an American has absolutely no understanding of British culture and language? Usually it's quite obvious. Usually it's because they have some twisted idea of what getting drunk is. It normally results in someone downing a Smirnoff Ice thinking that makes them like Al Pacino. This is a slightly geekier interpretation of why Americans don't understand English British culture. Some Americans developed a really quite important cryptographic procedure known as a nonce. Now, I don't know 100% if it was an American that created this word, but it wouldn't surprise me at all. Americans don't really tend to understand British culture, and they have quite a lot of say over how computer programming is developed and has evolved over the years. Now, obviously, a nonce isn't what you're thinking it is. That would be ludicrous, but Americans do have a bit of form for misusing this word in sort of British culture, anyway, the way that we would perceive it. Obviously, if you are British, then you don't need me to explain what a nonce is to us. But in terms of cryptography, it's a number that's only designed to be used once. It's for security purposes. Now, a nonce is used to defend against things such as replay attacks, which is where an attacker will repeatedly, maliciously request information as part of some sort of spoofing attack by IP packet substitution. An example of this is in HTTP digest access authentication. An attacker can use nonces to calculate an MD5 digest of somebody's password. And the way that a nonce can defend against this form of replay attack is just by changing whenever a 401 response is received from an authentication challenge. Most nonces will also include some sort of timestamp, which is an arbitrary string of numbers based on what time, on what day, on what month, on what year the timestamp was created. So this guarantees uniqueness because it's going to be essentially a GUID, which is a global unique identifier, plus the timestamp. And a GUID has a very, very small chance of being identical to another GUID. That's why they're called unique. And when you add a timestamp onto the end of that as well, which is also unique and will never be achieved at any point in history again, it makes it highly unlikely that they'll ever be the same match. And I mean highly unlikely. I mean, the numbers are almost incomprehensible. Now, nonces are used between clients and servers to authenticate and verify information, and a client will send a request to a server with a method, say get nonce, and a server will respond with a nonce. But a client can also use its own nonce, say a C nonce for client nonce. This can then be used in the return from the request after a nonce is received by the server to allow information to be verified. So the client may send back a piece of information and then a hashed nonce, C nonce, and password to uniquely identify the client. And then access will be granted. Hopefully all goes well. HTTP 200 should be received, 201, any 200 request really. And yeah, that's the use of a nonce. Which it's been very hard to make this video without cracking up every time I say it. N once, number once. They called it a nonce. Absolute idiots, man.